Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Midfielders pod of the FPL Wire, powered by DreamSetGo. I'm your host, Zophar, and I'm joined as always by my co host, Lateriser. 10 days to go now, fully in FPL mode.
Fully in FPL mode, been a little obsessed with the amount of reading I've done in the last 3 or 4 days. So I feel like I'm fully in the rhythm. Big pod, lots to discuss on this one. So let's not waste any time and let's get right into it.
Let's go. How was it?
Zoph?
Yep. I'm just trying to see, we're still picking up some audio issues on your end. I'm just hoping we can get through the stream with it. Your internet's been a bit dodgy today. Do you want to try connecting on the hotspot, or should we just give it a go for another 5 minutes?
Yeah. I'll do that very quickly while you play the sponsor plugs.
Cool. DreamSetGo is India's first sports travel and experiences platform, offering a range of premium end-to-end authentic experiences across football, cricket, tennis, F1, rugby and golf, among others. From matchday hospitality to VIP stadium tours, from private meet and greets with athletes and legends to exclusive access to their training sessions, DreamSetGo curates the most fulfilling sports travel packages for fans like you. All data you see on the FPL Wire is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The new improved members area is now up and running, and the new comparison tool lets you compare key stats for up to 3 players. Player projections are also live, and as always, you can access the custom stats table we create or make one for yourself. Sign up for membership today using our affiliate link in the description below. Right, guys, midfielders, could try saying something aloud. I think you should be fine now.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Does that sound okay to you?
Yes, we are in business. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Right. So we are taking a different approach, guys, to this pod than we did with the forwards, since the midfielder pool is so big. We introduced these charts from FPL Gromit last season. He made them only for defense, but this year he's made them for attack as well. So we will be looking at each of the top 6 teams as well as 7 other teams that have good fixtures, and we might have players of interest. So we will be starting here with Arsenal. We will be sharing 2 graphs from each team. The first one is going to be looking at the 6-game rolling XG, which is an XG average over the season, so we can look at some trends. So what we can see for Arsenal over here, they went to a 2+ XG team around the middle of the season. Then they tapered off at the end, but consistently above 1.5, 2 XG, which is encouraging, irrespective of fixtures over the season. Now, this is XG versus opposition strength. On the horizontal axis is where you see the difficulty. On the vertical axis is where you see the XG. So it's very clear now that Arsenal are a very fixture-dependent team. You see when they play against tough opposition, they average below 1 XG. Arteta goes quite defensive. But against mid-table opposition or weaker opposition, they average 2+ XG in a lot of games. There are very few games where they average very below XG against the weaker teams. So they are very clearly a team where you should attack when their fixtures are good and get rid when their fixtures are weak. So let's talk about some of their midfield assets over here. I know you were keen on Martinelli, Pranal, when we were in your stream.
Yes, I mean, just for actually the benefit of people that haven't heard or who are actually listening to us on audio, we're planning to do a lot more short form videos in terms of 15-minute, 20-minute content on there. So I just did a practice stream with my draft as well. It turned out pretty fine. The response was good. So you'll need to get on YouTube to get access to that, because we don't want to upload everything on audio. But yeah, man, Martinelli, I feel like for the start of the season, given Arsenal's fixtures, Palace, Leicester, Bournemouth, and Fulham, if I want to go in with a 3-man draft, I need to compromise on the 8 million Gabriel Jesus spot. And Martinelli just looks like too good an option to give up on at the moment. I've spoken to a few Arsenal fans, gone a little depth, and we know about the player and his ceiling as an asset. And, given that he looks like he's going to be starting in that position, I also feel like Zoff, because Gabriel Jesus is going to be playing with him, right? And he's been a nuisance up front. He's going to be occupying a fair few defenders. It might just leave some space open for Martinelli to take advantage of. So seems like a gift almost, and a really, really good option to not let go of early season. What are your thoughts?
I had Martinelli for a large period last season, and he was quite frustrating to own at times. There was this period where he consistently got benched. ESR kept coming on and scoring. So you kept worrying, is Martinelli going to start the next game? And now there's the Nketiah factor. There's a lot of preseason games where I saw Jesus and Nketiah play together. So that has me slightly worried. When you go two up top, that means you probably play Saka behind the striker. I know you spoke to Nima, you spoke to Bagan Boy, who said Martinelli's a form player, but I just feel that position is a sort of one where he can chop and change a little bit. He's not as nailed, obviously, as a Saka. So it's a good punt early on to attack the early fixtures, but all it takes is one bad game and his substitute to come on to score, and you could see him in a bench role next game, right?
Yeah, but then it comes down to your subjective rating of the player as well, right? I feel like the growth that we could see in this player could be at a rate similar to Saka last season. I feel like this is going to be his breakthrough year. He was bedded in. He played 19 out of 23 games that he was available for towards the latter part of the
How many
season.
did he start?
And when it comes to
19 or 23 he played, but how many did he start?
I don't have that data in front of me, but he just played a lot of minutes. And when it comes to underlying data as well, everything is really, really positive. He gets the most number of big chances in that Arsenal team. Even when it comes to players in the 6 million to 7.5 million bracket in midfield, he gets the highest rate of big chances as well. So those underlying numbers, etc. I just feel like, given the fact that we know he's a form player, etc., as well, it would take. I made up my mind on him a couple of days ago, wherein I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to start with this guy. I just rate him that highly. And then there is a slight wildcard joker in the pack as well, wherein there's a little bit of murmur where he's actually the penalty taker in that Arsenal team. Now we don't know what's going to happen with Gabriel Jesus as well, but he did take the penalty in the last game while Saka was on the pitch. So that potential upside as well. Given the fixtures. Given form, we know he's going to start game week 1. And I rate the player enough to go there and see what happens instead of not go there and then try to catch when he's rising in price very, very quickly.
Yeah, he's a bit punty, but I do have in my team currently, but he's one of the guys I'm a little bit iffy about. Whenever I look to save $1 million or $500,000, I basically switched over James to Martinelli in my setup right now. It's about the same amount of money in defense. So flip-flopping between that. It's one of the picks I want to go for, but I want to give him a clean slate, but Arteta just chops and changes there so much. Saka is good. I obviously like Saka. Saka feels definitely a lot more nailed on. Let's talk about the other guys. Odegaard, do you think he's an option?
I actually think we should touch upon Saka because he had a breakthrough year, 11 goals, 9 assists last season, 8 million. I think he's main man in that Arsenal team now. I mean, along with Jesus. And again, I just feel like Jesus is going to, he's not a striker who's focusing on goals. His assist threat, actually, his XA numbers were pretty good as well last season. He's going to help those around him as well. Do you think Saka is capable of making that step into a 10, 11 million Arsenal, FPL asset? Because 20 assists last season, and I think he got better. He faded a little towards the back end because he played through his skin, and I think a little bit of tiredness creeped in.
He's playing injured.
But what do you think about him? Do you think he has that much of a growth curve in him?
I think so. He definitely does. Yeah, he seems to be the one getting minutes consistently. He's taking a lot of set pieces. The loss of penalties is something I definitely don't like, and I do
loss of penalties.
Potential.
We don't know that. We don't have that information yet. I think whenever we have information that either Martinelli or Gabriel Jesus or Saka is going to be the penalty taker for Arsenal, that asset immediately becomes the best asset in that Arsenal attack. Simple.
I do think the pecking order has changed in terms of Arsenal assets, with Jesus now the clear best attacking assets. Now we're only talking about guys who we will get alongside Jesus. I don't think any of the midfielders I would recommend instead of. You might differ there, but
I don't have him in my team still.
You will. We've already had this discussion. You're in denial. I know he'll be in your team game week 1. I just didn't want to call you out the same way I did Pucker. I got a lot of shit for that anyway.
Fair enough.
So
fair enough.
As a second attacker, I do like Martinelli purely because of the price point. A lot of options you can switch to, and the fixtures are so good. The first 4 the fixtures really are worth attacking. So I don't mind the punt there, but it's not somebody I'm completely sold on yet. It's somebody I always worry about. It's not the kind of player I generally like to buy.
Yeah. It's just, Baker mentioned on his pod as well. I like, whenever I'm looking at a team closely, I like to talk to 3, 4, 5 fans that I trust from that team. Not a single one raised a red flag. All of them were bullish. And he's 6 million, so if it doesn't work, I think it's just a handy punt given the price.
Yeah.
So great
you
enabler.
place more
That's
value
all.
on fan opinion than I do. I just feel fans can sometimes be very biased in terms of like,
Yeah.
fans always like players who give more heart, give more energy, who play for the badge, etc., etc. But the managers aren't always on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I know, but I think Arteta rates Martinelli as well, and he's on the
Definitely.
same page as well. So
Definitely, but then they have
um,
options, right? Because the Nketiah factor changes things a little bit for me because we've seen Jesus and Nketiah link up very well. So where does Martinelli play there?
yeah, but again, whatever I've seen and read is that's like a second choice team. That's a plan B at the moment. So if let's say game 1 or game 2 Arsenal are struggling for goals, maybe that change in system happens.
Exactly.
Every manager
And
that I've
all,
spoken
all
to,
it takes is Martinelli to do poorly and Nketiah to come on and score. Then game week 2, you're again sweating on it whether he's going to start or not.
yeah, but it's a proper change of system also then, because it's not just that Nketiah comes in instead of Martinelli. Then there's a 3 at the back and there's an entire
There are
change
a
of
lot of
system. So I
things.
don't think it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it changes immediately or as easily as we reckon it is. I think Arsenal's Arteta, what he's doing smartly is having a good plan B in position. But I think this is going to be starting plan. And again,
That's fair.
I think you can afford. Generally, we don't like flirting game week 1, but given the circumstance of the season, you can flirt a lot more this season compared to others. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Much more at 6 million rather than a higher price. So I do agree with you. It's definitely worth a punt and one I'm considering as well. I was just playing devil's advocate a bit to make sure we're not biased towards him.
I do have this little thought in my head though, and the problem is Saka is not really looked at as much because Jesus is the new shiny toy and Martin is offering so much value at 6 million. But if you are going to look at it objectively, given the fixtures that Arsenal have at the start of the season, yeah, but the problem is he's competing with Diaz and Kulusevski and Foden and Mahrez for that 8 million spot. But there's absolutely nothing wrong if you're somebody into nailed X minutes to just go for Saka as your pick. I see absolutely nothing wrong.
Yep.
I see his goal involvement being high. So
Absolutely.
am I against the Saka pick at all? No, I think a very, very handy differential. I don't know what his ownership is like.
I think it could be worth the extra 2 million is the point I want to make.
Yeah, somebody who wants to use that 8 million position for a nailed pick, you know what you're going to get for 8 million with Saka, and that's guaranteed points. So just if you're not in a flirty mood, go there. Nothing against it.
Right. Touch upon Odegaard at all? Is he an FPL option this season?
I think there are 3 better FPL options in that team at the moment. And until that changes, which I don't see at the moment, I wouldn't go there.
I agree with you completely. Move on to Chelsea. No, sorry, Brighton first.
Yep.
You are quite keen on Brighton's inclusion over here, and this is probably why. Towards the end of the season, they had a massive XG spurt. Now, from an averaging around a 1 XG team till about game week 33, 34. The last 5 games, they went closer to a 2 XG team. So it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. In terms of the XG versus opposition, now again, nothing great. They were pretty much around a 1 XG team, but they did have a few games against the weaker opposition where they did go to 2+, but generally not a very attacking team. As an average, you would expect a 1.1, 1.2 XG game, even against weaker opposition. Now, you are very particular. You wanted them included. My response was, I don't see any investable assets. Who do you like here?
That's the thing. I don't know who the investable assets are at the moment because Trossard, in that period where Potter, finished the season extremely strongly, there was a huge spike in XG. Trossard did really well, but it was in the wingback position. It was more a Doherty or a Perisic sort of wingback where he was closer to goal a lot, but he did find a lot of action. And similarly with McAllister as well. He's ended the season, last season he had about 5 goals and 2 assists in 22 games. It's just, I wanted to mention this because their upward trend was very sharp and I don't think it was fixture related. I think Potter found a system that was very fruitful, and it's worth knowing because Brighton's fixtures early on, especially after the United game, Newcastle, West Ham, Leeds, Fulham, Leicester, Bournemouth. I just want to cite that because if Brighton continue in the same vein, for which there is no reason not to, the attacker could emerge from this team. That's the only reason why I wanted to put Brighton in there.
I honestly can't recommend anyone. I owned Trossard for a period last season. Very frustrating. With Potter,
nobody to start the season. I just wanted to make sure we're touching upon the spike in XG because there was one.
Yeah, let's not dwell too much on that. Let's talk about the Chelsea. Unfortunately, we have to cover them. The way we've been playing preseason has been absolutely awful. I don't have any Chelsea players in my draft currently. Unlikely I will. Let's just have a quick look at the XG trend over the season. Started very well, as we all know, but then there was this massive dip around November, December, where we struggled to get even 1 XG. But then it sort of remedied itself towards the end. But the problem was the conversion. You see over here, the XG chart does not really always correlate to the goal scored. So that is again something we have to monitor with Chelsea, because Tuchel's been talking about the lack of a goal scorer. Now, against the most of the opposition, again, lot of what I noticed is there are a lot of low XG games even against the weaker teams, which I found quite alarming. So not really very much a team you attack based on fixtures, I would say. Only 2 games above 3 XG. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think at 8 million in that price bracket, until we know otherwise, there are better options in attack. As simple as that. As much as I'd want to, recommend Mason Mount because he's reliable as they come. We just don't know what Chelsea's going to be like. I was reading a few articles when it comes to Chelsea. Tuchel actually really wanted to change what you're seeing on the screen in terms of make them a more attacking team, which is what Tuchel is traditionally. But he just doesn't have the signings he wants as yet. So I feel like Chelsea are a team that will pick up later. And until you see something there, you wait and watch. That said, I think when Chelsea do settle, and I don't think it'll take much for them to settle, because I still think Tuchel is an elite manager. You know how low people are on Chelsea as a team. All it needs is a 3-5-2 system clicking, Chelsea scoring 4 goals, Sterling and Mount looking like sharp next weekend in the pre-season friendly, and people are on Chelsea assets back again. I think it isn't as far away as people make it out to be when it comes to us going for Chelsea assets, because the quality is there. The manager is elite. It'll take a couple of games for it to click, and momentum is a weird thing in football. So when it does happen, I think Sterling, and I think it's very easy to accommodate 3 premiums if one of them is a 10 million asset in your team. You don't have to compromise much at all. And in the 10 million bracket at the moment, Sterling's my favorite. I think he's going to be playing a pivotal part in FPL this season, wherein, we mentioned Kai is the kind of player who facilitates others doing well. And I think 10 million is a really, really good price for Sterling, who's done double-digit goals pretty much every season he's been a starter.
Agree. I like Sterling, but just because of how the form has been and how the cohesion around the team is, it's not someone that you would probably want to go in early on.
Yeah, I know, but I just think it won't take long, because think about it, when Tuchel took reins of Chelsea. Yeah, it's just people shouldn't hold on to this heads down press conference. For all you know, Tuchel's just putting pressure on the new owner and saying, get signings in the door, because that's the tactic that he needs to apply. So don't have a negative bias towards them based on what you're seeing in preseason, because they're a quality players and elite manager.
Yeah, could be just a good he's giving them the good old-fashioned kick up the arse, or the GPL as we call it in India. So could just be what the team needs to get fired up. But initially, I don't like Mount. I think he will probably, the 3rd or 4th maybe in the 8 million asset. We'll talk more about the 8 million guys. You have a separate comparison lined up for those. But in terms of investable midfield assets, it's just Sterling and Mount?
Yeah. Unless Gallagher puts his hand up.
No, I saw Gallagher a lot in preseason. He was playing the Kante role. Not really breaking into the box much, pressing a lot. So absolutely not an FPL option.
All right. So yeah, at the moment, I feel like Sterling is one I'm happy to jump on early, because the fixtures are still there for the taking. Everton, Spurs, Leeds, Leicester, Southampton. These are fixtures that you like for your attackers. So, the moment I see something or some signs from Chelsea, that's one team I'll be watching very closely game week 1. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Just a shout out to the guys who are listening on the audio version. We would highly recommend you watch this section on video, because you'll get a much better idea of the data we're talking about. We'll try to articulate whatever we see, but we can't really repeat or go into detail too much. Right. Let's talk about
who do we have next?
Leeds. Very interesting to talk about, because they have a good set of fixtures, but I really don't know what the identity is under Marsh, because I think towards the end of the season, he just wanted results. He wasn't as much concerned about imposing his idea, imposing his philosophy. He just wanted points on the board. So what we saw once Marsh was appointed, there was an improvement in XG, but then there was a dip towards the end, because then he realized he needed to shut up shop at the back, work on more of a results-oriented approach. So we have the numbers up here. Now, this is now Bielsa is in orange. Marsh is in green. Now, Bielsa's XG will naturally, as we'd expect, consistently higher. A lot of low XG games for Marsh under middle teams. The maximum they hit even against the weaker opposition was around 2 XG. So we need to sort of reorient our thinking on Leeds. This isn't Bielsa's Leeds. I think they're going to be a lot more pragmatic around a 1.2, 1.5 XG team.
If you're looking at the chart, he's matching Bielsa's Leeds in a lot of occasions. I still think he's a front foot manager. I don't think you need to reorient to thinking that much, because I feel like Leeds' attack is still good. It's one to monitor closely, and somebody will emerge from that team as a good, cheap attacking asset. It's just we don't know who it is at the moment, because Sinistera's new, Adamson's new. We don't know how they're going to function as a team, and it's too dark, too much of a shot in the dark at the moment, given you have really good options which look like safer, surer bets at the 5.56 million bracket. I am interested that Rodrigo took the penalty. If he's a penalty taking 6 million midfielder,
I haven't even actually looked at the Leeds player prices. Honestly, they've not been on my radar at all. But I do think Rafinha is such a fulcrum. Everything went to that team. I'm really curious to see how they replace that. It'll probably be more of a collective effort now. Earlier, the game plan was just get the ball to Rafinha, let him do what he wants. Harrison is also being linked with a move away to a lot of clubs. It'll be interesting if Leeds can hold on to him as well.
Yeah. At the moment, don't touch early season is where I am with Leeds United attackers. As much as I'd want to, because their attackers, the fixtures are there for the taking.
Agree. Talk about Leicester. This is a team I think I'm quite bullish on. But the fixtures aren't that great early on. And what's interesting to see over here is they started the season quite strong in terms of XG. They hit about a 2 XG average on mid-season. There was a big slump towards the end. And this, I think, is naturally because they started prioritizing games. They started playing the stronger 11 in the Europa League. They started playing the B team. So naturally, performances dipped to a 1 XG level. But again, there's a big jump at the end when they were eliminated from Europe. So in terms of XG, lot of good +1 XG teams, +1 XG games against the weaker teams. Lot of 2+ XG games. But again, very fixture dependent. Against the tougher teams, Rodgers likes to play on the counter. So naturally, that means a lower XG tally. But in terms of the midfield assets, I think there are really two we are looking at, Maddison and Barnes.
Agreed.
Yep. So what are your thoughts there?
Maddison ended the season on a stormer, right? I think he had some 6 or 7 returns in the last 3 games. That's how strongly he was. I punted on him game week 38. And the sounds that Brendan Rodgers is making in terms of this is the best he's seen Maddison play. Now, last week I was a little worried about Leicester because they look to have put a lot of their assets for sale at the moment. And I feel like there are some financial issues. That's the only thing I'm unsure of. But if that isn't the case, what I've seen so far in preseason when it comes to Leicester City as well is that it looks like they're going to go with a 4-3-3. Starting, I think, Fofana, Evans, along with Justin and Ricardo on both sides. Soumare, Dewsbury Hall, and Maddison are going to be in mid. Maddison is going to be furthest forward. And you're going to have Vardy flanked by Albrighton still and Harvey Barnes as the team. So this leads to, because of the work that the work that Albrighton does, this leads to making Harvey Barnes and Maddison really, really good assets. So if nothing changes in terms of recruitment, and if you're looking like you're going to be wildcarding early in the season, I don't mind punting on either Harvey Barnes or Maddison game week 1 because you have Brentford at home and Southampton at home in the first 3 game weeks. I feel like they are really, really strong fixtures from an attacker point of view. I've always liked a broad team from an attacking perspective. If they're playing 1 game a season, I think he handles that really well. And I don't mind it as a punt if nothing changes on the recruitment front. In fact, Maddison is 24 and he felt like he was a different player towards the end of last season. And there is the England motivation as well. He hasn't quite found his way into the England setup. We have a World Cup, and I think especially with him, because if you notice the post-match interviews that he did last season as well, he was talking about the numbers. He was talking about the goals and assists, and I think that is in his mind. He's looked incredible in preseason as well. So very good punt game week 1 as well as Harvey Barnes. I think both of them will be in the first choice, and I have nothing against either picks.
Just about to let you know, I got a notification because we just switched to Zoom. I thought Zoom had unlimited calls for like 2 people. I just got notification of the time limit, so you'll probably have to reconnect after 10 minutes. I'll let you know. My bad on that.
All right, no worries at all.
Cool. So
yeah, what are you thinking about that?
Talking about Harvey Barnes, then my problem with Barnes is as soon as they switch to a back 5, as soon as they start playing Iheanacho, Daka and all that stuff, Rodgers likes to do that a lot. Barnes is the first on the chopping block.
I feel like that is a little less predictable when he has Europe to deal with as well. And you don't know what he's going to be playing. But I think when he's playing one game a week, I think he's a little more predictable and easier to deal with. So yeah, that's where I am. Still, neither of them are finding themselves in my team at the moment. But if I was to pick one right now, I would go with Maddison, just because I feel like very, very high ceiling given where he is at in his career. What do you think about Dewsbury Hall at 5 million? Is there anything there?
I like Bailey more. But I guess he could be an out if Bailey fails or gets dropped. That's probably your out right there.
He just seems like a ticker. He's not an explosive pick. And I feel like there are enough explosive options in this midfield bracket that for which you don't need to go for a Dewsbury. He did well in preseason. I think he's got 1 goal and 3 assists in preseason. So one to monitor, I think, at 5 million. If he looks like he's more attacking than usual, could be interesting, especially because it looks like Tielemans could maybe find his way outside that club.
I'm just bringing up the fixtures really quick for Leicester. I don't remember them. So Brentford, Southampton are decent, but that's the thing. Like we saw, they're quite fixture dependent. Arsenal, Chelsea, United, and even Brighton are not that great. So I don't really think it's somewhere I'm going to go, because I'll probably get them around game week 7 or 8 on my wildcard around then, but not early doors.
Yeah. Great pick, but they just don't find themselves on the top of my pecking order either. But Maddison, 8 million, if you're looking at a short-term wildcard, I don't mind it.
Right.
Yeah.
Liverpool, the XG monsters. Average 2+ XG for most of the season. There was a slump at the end. Again, I think they started prioritizing the Champions League, so we shouldn't take that too seriously. But their XG graph versus opposition strength is absolutely monstrous. It's far superior to City's. So many games above 2+ XG against the weaker teams. Almost no games like below 1 XG against those mid-table or weaker teams. Games somewhere where they hit even 5, 4, 3.5. This seems like a team you need at least a double up in attack. So there's no point talking about Salah. I don't think really much to touch upon that. Let's talk about Diaz, somebody who you don't have in your draft right now.
No, I think we should talk about Salah, because what I'm seeing is there are a fair few people going without Salah. Let's just be clear about that, right? Because let's not assume that people are know where we stand on that opinion, but you do not entertain the fact at all that you can consider going without Mo Salah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. Whatever argument anybody wants to make in terms of, what Darwin might hog the chances and the goals in that team, etc., etc. Until you see it, I'm not somebody who is willing to gamble against Salah, especially when he looks like he's going to be the prominent captain in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I know people are talking about City and Spurs rotating well, but Salah is a 90-minute man who's on penalties, and you're just going to get what you see when it comes to them. And just look at the XG. They're a much more attacking team than City as well, if you really want to think about it. So neither of us are for it or entertain that thought. Now, the one I'm really interested in talking about is Luis Diaz, because it might be overthinking. First of all, I don't think he's a Sadio Mane in the terms of the amount of time he finds himself in the box. And I'm a little bit concerned whether he's like an ex-lively midfielder where he flatters to deceive a little, because he looks incredible. He's settled in the team really, really well. But all of his shots are slightly low XG shots, in the sense that they're all cutbacks from outside the box and he's popping them inside the goal. And I don't find him close to goal as often as I should. And he's competing with other really good assets in that Liverpool team itself, to find a place in our FPL team. So great high upside. I understand he looks like he's nailed. I'm not worried about his minutes at all. I think he's made the left spot his own, especially because Jota's injured early season. But are you worried about that a little at all?
Rotation?
Not rotation. That, he flatters to deceive in terms of being a good FPL asset.
Talk about his data. It's interesting because in terms of chance creation, his data rate is very poor. And it's something you mentioned on your stream, which I quite liked. He doesn't arrive late in the box like Mane did, sort of waiting for those Trent crosses at the far post and stuff. He takes a lot of shots, but he's a high volume shooter, not a very high XG shooter. That's what really worries me. So I don't know whether I want to go Robbo or Diaz yet, but primarily I'm on Diaz right now because it's just that 8 million mid spot I want to keep a little bit flexible.
Yeah. If this is just a theory and a whiff of fancy in our head, because you remember, it still was his first 6 months in the Premier League and he still did so well. So it's only going up from here. So nothing wrong with the pick. I'm just worried about this little shots from far. If he gets a lot closer to goal, then good days. But Darwin scored 4 goals right after our forward striker spot last week. So I can't wait to see what happens in the Community Shield, and I'll be forming a lot of my opinion based on that one single game.
Why should you do that though? My brother asked me this. I told him I'm waiting for the Community Shield. He's like, why does that matter so much? And I really couldn't think of a good answer.
So when it comes to City, we have half the guys who haven't played for them at the moment. So my inkling is that when it comes to Manchester City, their starting front three is going to be Grealish on the left and Foden on the right, Haaland playing central, and De Bruyne in a free role behind them. And they'll be more of a 4-2-3-1 team than a traditional 4-3-3 that we've seen. But until we see that in the Community Shield, where I feel if I see Jack Grealish starting left mid in that Community Shield, where he spent most of his minutes in preseason, he becomes an incredible. I've been quite bullish on him generally as well. He's the one that I really want in my team. I want to see how that happens, because I've always felt that Grealish is much better with a central 9 in his team, and he's good at pulling people apart and creating. So he's a good assist taker, and I like that chemistry already, where Grealish and Haaland are talking about it post-match, where they're saying, that's exactly what I wanted, Jack. You give me more of that. That's the kind of chemistry that you want to see. Grealish is almost better suited to this setup than he was last year, and generally Pep signings take that. So it's a little bit of confirmation bias. That's really about it. Again, when it comes to how Liverpool are playing, and if Darwin is starting, I think a lot of us will look at him much more seriously, because there is a threat from Firmino. And Firmino tailed off towards the end of last season. He wasn't a big part of the Liverpool setup last season. I think if Jota was fit right now, all of us would have probably assumed that Jota is going to be the starting striker game week 1. And he'd been a lot more of our thinking. So you quite don't not know what is happening. And I don't think we are dependent on the Community Shield for a lot of these decisions. It's just these fringe players that we're sort of flirting with, that we need clarity on in terms of what's happening, in terms of patterns of play. That's about it.
Right. Before this.
All right, cool. You need to draw those things again?
No. That's all plug and play. We're good to go. I'll clip this out later on.
All right, cool. So where were we? We were talking about
Community Shield and Liverpool. So in terms of, besides let's talk Diaz versus Robbo a little bit, I think, because that's pretty much our decision. I think Trent and Salah pick themselves as our 2 Liverpool picks. It comes down to Diaz versus Robbo. Where are you in that direction? Because you're quite big on Robbo as well.
Yeah, I think both are great picks. I just have that little doubt about Diaz in terms of, and that's probably just overthinking it and not taking the gift that we are offered. Just that little doubt where he flatters to deceive as an FPL asset, which isn't the case with Robbo. He's been a proven man for all the years, and this little small clip of data that Pras gave us is actually Robbo has done really, really well once Diaz came into the setup, because of him opening up space, which is why Robbo finds a lot more space at the back post. That said, there are a couple of things I want to talk about, and I think Liverpool are going to evolve from a team that normally plays 4-3-3 into a team that plays 4-2-3-1, because I think it's getting younger by the day. And there are a couple of cogs in the wheel that make me think about it. And Carvalho and Harvey Elliott are just really, really good players. And Keita really hasn't done that well. Henderson is aging just a tad little bit. So if they play a 4-2-3-1 with either Carvalho or Elliott as a 10, that sort of changes the dynamics as well. Which is why, a lot of people are worried about Diaz getting subbed out. I don't think he gets subbed out when this formation change happens, if Liverpool are trying to attack a game, because I think they'll remove one of the mids and throw in either Carvalho or Elliott. And they've done well so far in preseason as well. I wonder at what point exactly this evolution happens, because I think I'm quite confident that by the end of the season, we'll see a 4-2-3-1 from Liverpool being their prime formation, because I think there's a little bit of an identity change happening with their team. And a 5 million or a 5.5 million Elliott or Carvalho could put their hand up at some point in the season. But not digressing. I just want to touch that about Liverpool. But I think Diaz is a good pick. Don't overthink it. If you ask me today, who do I prefer? I think that there is 1 or 2 better options as FPL assets in that Liverpool team. I think Robbo is more of a sure thing.
Definitely more of a sure thing. Right now, Diaz is purely there as a price point for the 8 million mid. And we'll do we're not talking too much about them because there's a full-on comparison data we have. We'll go more into the 8 million mids then. Move on from Liverpool.
Yes.
Man City, the champions. Don't need to talk about their XG. Again, they spiked around 3, around a 2.5 average. But what I found this data interesting over here now, in terms of opposition strength, they had a lot of games that were under 2 xg, even against.
Just one thing, Zoph.
Go ahead.
Before you move on, can you move to their progressive
Sure, absolutely.
6-point XG?
Yes.
I just want to touch upon, if you see the end of the season, especially around the game week 30 mark, that XG goes really, really up. And their goals scored, as in there's an overperformance in terms of XG now. Most of this is a certain Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that because I've been thinking about it, all the noises that you've read in preseason as well, where Pep said that, last season he came into the setup looking injured as well. He looks like a different player and he's carrying on from very left form. I think around game week 25, 26 onwards, outside of Son and Ken, De Bruyne was the best FPL asset in the league, period. And I mentioned it on all the pods that we've done so far in terms of, I think he's going to get a free role and I think he's going to be really, really good as a free role. I think playing with somebody like Haaland is also going to be really good for him. I think he's going to be more of a 90-minute man compared to an Erling Haaland. So again, based on what we see in the preseason, because it's scary to bet against Erling Haaland, I'm just thinking that if I'm maybe dodging or thinking with the idea of going in, because I'm on a 3 at the moment, starting with Kevin De Bruyne, because I think he could be a very, very handy differential, especially if it looks like he's going to get that free role for Manchester City, which I think might be the case this season. A lot of people have dismissed him, and I think he's going to continue very left from last season. That's where he's in my thoughts very seriously for game week 1
and I don't think anyone has dismissed him. If he was even at 10 million, I think he'd be in all our squads, but just at 12 million, when the thing with KDB, the captaincy, I know he delivered against Wolves and all that stuff, but traditionally he's not been your 16, 19 point in terms of captaincy. It's usually 6, 8 at best. He gets 1 return, in an assist is usually 3 bonus. So it's usually 8, 9 is something what we see from Kev.
Yeah. And the problem is, the blunt truth of it is that Salah is going to be nailed in your team, no matter what, at least for us. And if you're looking for a 12-minute midfielder in your team, it's very, very tough to argue against Heung-min Son. It's very tough to argue against Heung-min Son. You much rather, any given day, I think, no matter what the fixtures, etc. are as well, I can't find a decent enough argument for picking a striker in an improving team where you know what's going to happen, and go KDB over Son. The only thing I can think about is maybe Conte tends to sub Son off around the 60th, 65th, 70th minute mark. But even that's KDB. It's just a weak argument. That's all. Just a weak argument. So that's why, yeah. But he's in my thoughts. He's just in my thoughts. And I think he's going to do well this season.
Right. Now, looking at their XG data, it's not as impressive as Liverpool's. Very few games above 3 XG, lot of games under 2. Against average opposition. If I were to go without, I don't think that attack necessarily needs doubling up on as much as Liverpool's. If I had to pick one attack, I wanted a second one off, I would be more inclined towards Liverpool. Do you agree?
No, I just think what is going to happen with the City again is they're going to have a change in identity. I don't think how they played last season and how they are going to play this season are going to have many similarities. I think patterns of play, etc., how they create, how they approach games. You're going to, normally you used to have 4 attackers getting 3 shots. Now they're going to try making towards a play where 1 or 2 of their assets are, getting the 75% of the shots in that team is creating. And I think this is going to change dynamic a little. And I think they're going to be a much more attacking team last season. So
why?
Because of Erling Haaland and because of how they want to progress as a team. They were a lot more attacking when Aguero, Sane and Sterling were in that team. Last season they played without a striker throughout. So Pep played the whole chokehold system that he's been playing for last 2 seasons. I think when he has a striker, he's traditionally been more attacking as a manager. And I think that might be the case this season. So I'm not too bothered about it. I just want to see what patterns of play emerge, because a lot of people are on Mahrez, by the way. And I'm not confident about Mahrez starting game week 1 as well. It just screams a little bit of a trap. You could get lucky. He starts game week 1. If he's starting game week 1, we know how good an asset Mahrez is, but I'm not convinced about it. Especially if Haaland looks like he's going to be starting game week 1, because he's not much of a presser. And neither is Mahrez. And I think if 2 of his front 3 in a Pep Guardiola team which relies on front foot pressing, I just don't see that happening. So tread with caution if you're punting on Mahrez. And
what about the others?
I think
Grealish. Yeah, you were talking about Grealish. Tell me more about him.
I think he's going to offer value. I think this is going to be his breakthrough season at City, for example. It's. I don't think they've forgotten that he's a
Again,
100
why?
million player, and
Why?
because of patterns of play, I think he's not like a good shooter in my head. I think what are his traits that are elite? He's an elite ball carrier. He's elite at driving through midfield and creating space for others. And it's similar to what Kevin is doing in the central or the right hand side. And I think because he's going to do this and Haaland is going to occupy a couple of defenders, that interplay, I think he's going to get a lot more assists this season, which wasn't the case last season. And I think if he's supplying most of the goals in that team, he's going to offer tremendous value at 7 million. He was in everybody's FPL team season before last at Aston Villa. And we know with Pep Guardiola, his signings take time to integrate into the team. He's just more suited to playing. He's just more suited to playing with a natural number 9, and which is why I think he'll do well. And he's looked sharp in preseason as well. Like I've seen the extended highlights for all their games. He looks involved in that first team. He's had a good preseason, and I think he's ready to take off this year.
Why I'm a little bit hesitant because I see Foden now playing a lot less games as striker, naturally, right? With Haaland, and Foden's other position would be on the left wing. And Foden we've seen as a Pep favorite.
Or the right.
On the right is not much last season, but Pep has mentioned he can play there. That's why I'm just a little bit skeptical on the Grealish aspect.
Fair enough. And it's a good devil's advocate point of view. But I think eventually the front three in my head is going to be Grealish, Foden, and Haaland. So yeah. Foden is the joker in the pack, and Pep's quotes actually this week were quite interesting, where he said that Foden is somebody who can join training 2 days and then start a game. That's how ready he is. So, that is a little bit worrying, and that's why it makes the Community Shield a lot more interesting. That said, given the preseason and the gelling that he's done with the team, I don't see Grealish not starting this season.
Correct. Game week 1, it does look like a good prospect, but then again, game week 2 is a crapshoot.
No, I think it's a phase. I think Grealish is good for the first 4 or 5 weeks.
We can agree to
again, I don't want to sit on the fence in terms of, I don't want to sit on the fence with where I am with City assets. I think he's a good pick. That's all.
He's an interesting price point because most of the mids we are talking about are either in the 6 or in the 8 bracket. He's the only guy I would say at 7. You could probably look at, because again, like Barnes, I said I don't like because I'm going to switch to a back 3. He's probably the only other guy at that 7 price point who's interesting.
Yeah. And interesting to see how Foden does as well. I don't think Foden is going to be forgotten as an FPL asset either. In fact, I was looking at this very interesting table on the Fantasy Football Scout members area. By the way, to become a member, wow, such a natural integration of an ad. You need to click on the link in the description below. If you're clicking on these links, you're helping out. You're helping us out as we're affiliate members. But the interesting table, which is something Top Marks pointed me out to, was that Foden gets a lot of high XG shots, which means that basically out of all the shots, his average XG per shot is higher or in the top 6 or 7 in the league amongst midfielders, which basically means that he gets a lot of shots close to goal, which is also the case with Heung-min Son. He, I think, was second on the table when it comes to XG per shot. So again, we don't know what's going to happen, but Foden is going to be an interesting asset. If both are similarly priced, I think you go for Jack as a 7 million pick and save, right? That's where we are.
So in terms of midfield assets, I think it has to be Kev at top, obviously. So you would rank Grealish 2, Mahrez 3, Foden 4, or 3 and 4 would interchange for you?
I don't think Mahrez is a pick game week 1 because I don't see that sustaining if he's playing with Haaland. I have Kev, Grealish, Foden.
Fair enough. I would probably agree with that because I think Mahrez, there's just too much history. We've been burnt so many times to go back there. That definitely plays a part as well.
But I just wanted to ask you this, because where do you stand in, because Kev, the real question is Kev versus Son versus Kane versus Haaland as the second premium. Where does Kev rank for you there?
I'd really want him, but I think I would still prefer the Spurs guys because of the sheer goal involvement that they have. And we'll talk about the Conte's numbers. Conte's XG numbers are actually superior to City's in a lot of aspects.
So you have him behind the Spurs boys.
Yes.
As simple as that.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
At the moment.
He would probably be 4th in terms of my ranking of premium assets. Salah, Kane. Kane's son is really interchangeable. You could put them either. You could put those guys in 2 and 3 and De Bruyne in 4.
All right. Good.
Man United, how much
Who are we
time
going
do you
to
want to
next?
spend? Man United, do you want to spend much time? Because the data from last season really is irrelevant. You can probably just talk more about their assets in general.
Yeah. I covered it on the stream as well, but there's a lot of interest in Manchester United assets, and rightly so, because again, I think they are priced to buy. Whether you go for Jadon Sancho or Marcus Rashford, both of them will start the first 3 or 4 games in the season. If you're somebody who isn't very who's doesn't like taking too much risk and wants somebody who's absolutely nailed, Jadon Sancho is your guy. I think he's going to be starting every game. He is going to be one of Ten Hag's most important players. I think he's built to play for a manager like Eric Ten Hag, and I see him getting double-digit goals and assists this season, which means he's going to be great value at 7.5 million. What I've seen in preseason so far, I mentioned it on the previous stream. Both of them are getting equal volume of chances, but Sancho just looks sharper and his finishing just looks better at the moment. That doesn't mean Rashford won't do well. The question that Danny Bullet, who's in the chat with us, asked me is, do you think Sancho is 1 million better than Rashford as an asset at the moment? And the answer that I can come up is probably no. If the difference was maybe 0.5 million, I'd say, yeah, I think Sancho's 0.5 million better than Rashford at the moment, but I don't know if he's 1 million. And I think all 3 United assets, Martial, Rashford, or Sancho, I think they're good to go game week 1, despite what you've seen happen at Carrington today. I think Ronaldo's going to be leaving the club. I think he's going to go to Atletico very, very late in the season. And even if he did train, I don't think Ten Hag is going. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I don't think Ten Hag is going to throw away all the work he's done in preseason by starting him game week 1. Imagine what that does to somebody like Tony Marshall. And I don't think ETH is that kind of a manager. I think Ronaldo might come into play game week 4 or 5 onwards if he's at a club. So I don't think to worry too much. But again, if you're somebody who's safe, Rashford and Sancho are safe. And earlier I used to think that Ronaldo being them makes them a worse FPL asset. Seeing what I've seen with Ten Hag, and seeing that he's managed a season with Holler as a striker, and he's managed a season as Tadic as his false nine striker. And what I've read about Ten Hag, he's somebody who can make the most of the players he has at his disposal. I think you can't go wrong with either, but get a United attacker in your team. I think they'll do well.
So at the outset, I know you're saying the safe for game week 1, and we have the early wildcard to follow on, but that's not something I want to see. I want to hear he's safe till game week 4, game week 5, game week 6. Safe for game week 1, it actually raises alarm bells in my head. It makes me think about what about game week 3? What about game week 4? That's where the Ronaldo elephant in the room.
If you're looking for somebody who's safe until game week 7 or 8, no matter what happens, Jadon Sancho is your guy. Because I'll tell you what happens, right? So if Ronaldo ends up playing the striker and you're a little worried, etc., in terms of what's happening, I think Marshall's look sharper than Rashford in preseason. I think he'll compete with Rashford on that left wing role if you're worried about Ronaldo starting the season. I don't see Sancho competing with anybody. He's first choice no matter what. That's how good the player is and that's how good he's looked. So then Sancho's your guy.
Let's rank these guys, and we can include Marshall as well, since we are discussing Manchester United players. So in terms of safety and security of starts as well as general potential, I think Sancho is the one you're recommending. Yep. Am I correct? 7.5.
Yes. Yeah. If you're looking to play the longer game, you won't go wrong with Jadon Sancho.
Yeah. Rashford is exactly the point you raise. I'm worried since, like you said, Marshall is playing so well. When Ronaldo does come, Marshall, we know he can play very effectively on the left wing as well. Yep. But like you said, I think he's safe at least till about game week 2, game week 3, because Ronaldo, he's going to want him to get used to the system, the philosophy, etc. And we still think that Ronaldo will likely leave, but there is a little bit of doubt there.
Yeah. If that happens, fair enough. But again, I don't think you need to worry. I think all 3 are good.
Yeah. I just generally worry a lot more than you do, I guess.
Yeah. Because everything changes in terms of systems. And I think he set his team up for the first 3 or 4 weeks. He's trained them for a month in a certain way. I don't think he's going to throw it away. He's a stronger enough manager from what I've read.
What do you think of the fixtures? Let's talk about the first 3-4 fixtures. Very quick. What are the fixtures? Brighton, Brentford, Liverpool, Southampton, Leicester. They're good fixtures. I don't mind those for an attacker. Fixtures.
Yeah, I don't mind them either. Even Brighton game week 1.
That's the first home game. First home game is always fun.
Yeah, but Brighton are a really, really good team. And they're a sort of a front foot team, which actually might suit us because we've got pacey people who can run behind the defense. That's about it, And that's where we are. I don't see any problems. attackers are good, I think you need to start the season with one.
I don't actually think you're right in terms of attackers. I think I'm going to punt on Rashford, at least for the first 3-4 games, and see, because I really don't think Ronaldo is going to stick around.
Yeah.
Should we move on to Newcastle?
So that's the case. Yeah.
What a way to treat a club legend. Quite disappointing. Right. So we're talking about Newcastle now. We see a massive improvement. Well, not massive, but significant improvement once Howe is appointed over here. We did improvement in XG, especially towards the last few games. Go ahead.
Sorry. Can we just trickle back and touch upon, because I've seen a couple of people who have Bruno Fernandes in their team.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I think it's worth touching upon. I don't think he's going to be as good an FPL asset as of now because of how Rashford, Martial, and Sancho are priced. And what's been happening in preseason is Bruno generally likes to play a high volume of low percentage balls. Now, and in his post-match, not in his post-match, he does his interview with Sky, which was quite interesting, where he said that if you're not doing what Ten Hag is asking you to do, you're out of the team no matter who you are. And he's actually already implemented this where somebody showed up late to training twice and he's not gotten a minute in preseason. So Bruno's actually started constraining himself a little bit more, and he's playing more of an assist playmaker role. He is close to goal a lot of the times. I think he will get 7, 8, 9 goals to the season, but he won't be the premium Bruno Fernandes asset that we saw previously, because I don't think he's going to be as close to goal. Even in his interviews, he's talking about how his responsibility is to make sure the strikers are getting their goals, and that's his responsibility in the team. So until we see otherwise, to start the season, I think you ignore Bruno and you go for somebody in the front three.
Fair enough. Move on?
Yeah.
Right. We see the improvement on XG under Howe, but that being said, now there are a lot of sub-2, sub-1 XG games against average teams. You see the games under Eddie Howe are in green over here. Some very low XG games against a tough team. So again, they look to be a very fixture-dependent team, but not a very attacking team, as we've seen under Howe. Not very much like his Bournemouth teams, a much more pragmatic team, close to a 1.2 XG per average sort of teams. I like this for Wilson because Wilson, again, like Kane, hogs a lot of their chances, etc., a lot of their goals. But in terms of midfield, are there any investable assets there? What about this Bruno?
Not an asset. I think there are much better picks at 6 million. He's a great player. Absolutely love him. But I don't know whether what he did last season is repeatable. He was the late runner on the counter in that team, and it worked out in a few games, but I just don't think it is something that's repeatable. That's all. Unless his role is defined as a Yaya Toure role and we got late to the Toure bandwagon. But I think when you have a Neto at 5.5 and a Martinelli at 6, I wouldn't touch a Bruno at 6 million. That's where I am. He's a non-option for me.
Yeah. St. Max is a forward now, right? Or is he a mid?
Let me check. Let me quickly go to St. Max.
This is how much I've looked at Newcastle.
A forward now.
Right. So
he's a forward now.
Forward now, but yeah. Still, I don't like the fixtures also mixed. I think you were quite keen on that. Let's have a quick look at the fixtures also again. Forest, Brighton, not bad. City, Wolves, Liverpool, Palace. Some good defensive teams there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all good defensive teams.
I'm not very keen on starting with I normally look for a reason to start with Callum Wilson. The fixtures just aren't there at the moment to start the season. Also, what I think is happening with Newcastle is I think they're struggling a little to bring their attackers signed. And I think that will happen a little late in the window, and then we'll see that team evolve in attack. Until then, I think Eddie Howe will continue playing in this pragmatic manner. Just one thing worth pointing out, though, is in one of the preseason matches, he said that he expects 15 to 20 goals from his striker, whether that's just Wilson or Wilson plus Wood combined. And if Callum Wilson is priced at 7.5 million, who's fit, is expected to get 15 goals in that team, then once the fixtures look better, looks like he could be the go-to striker at that price.
We would love to have Wood firing again.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this is a graph that really threw me off my chair. This is pretty much the best way to show or to quantify a new manager bounce. You look at the chart from where Conte was appointed right after Gameweek 10 and just look at the upward trajectory there. At one point, they were averaging a 6-game rolling XG of around 2.5. That is ridiculously good. There was a bit of a slump towards the end, which we know about, and that they did recover. But look at the XG. This is now closer to Liverpool's This is Liverpool, Man City level in terms of the teams, the mid-table teams, the weaker teams. They absolutely tonk them. You have games over 2 plus XG, games over 3 XG, one game even close to 4. But and even against the tougher teams, it's not that bad. Even in the tougher opposition, you do see games above 1 XG. And the thing you know with these guys is these XG chances are going to fall to the front three. So that's where we are on Spurs. I don't have any attackers. I really want the attackers. Before we talk about Son, let's talk about Kulusevski.
I just want to touch upon the XG chart that you mentioned, which is actually making so much sense when you think about Conte. Because if you think about last season, they beat Man City first game, and they are potentially best set up to play teams that like to hog possession, because I think they have one of the best counter-attacking setups in the league so far. So even if you think, they will not do well, I think 3 or 4 chances is what they'll probably get against tougher opposition, but you bet they're going to be high quality chances because it's going to be probably one of the best midfielders / number 10s of the game, Harry Kane, feeding them. As simple as that.
I mean, we need to reorient our thinking in terms they are up there in terms of an attack with Liverpool and Man City.
Yes, and more predictable if you really think about it from an FPL point of view. I've been singing this song since day one, and I think I might have come to a point of no return in terms of starting the season without a Spurs attack. I think I won't forgive myself if I do it. Weird things happen in the final week, but I think I'm almost there.
Yeah. I've currently swapped out Haaland for Kane myself. I'm not that convinced on Haaland's minutes. And the thing is, if Haaland looks on fire on game week 1, it's not a transfer I mind using to get him in for Bournemouth, because I'll probably captain him there. I don't mind using a transfer on a captain at all. I think it's a good use of it. And as we've spoken about the way Chelsea are looking, I don't put it past Kane to score a couple at Stamford Bridge as well.
And actually, if you see the fixtures and if it means that Southampton are going to be, I don't think they'll be naive to play a high line game week 1. The striker in that Spurs team is Son. It's not Kane. It's Son. And that's something to keep in mind as well. I've always tended to pick Kane over Son all the time because there's an inherent love for the player as well. I haven't been friends with Heung-min Son, and I want to change that this season. Just that, again, as you would have it, Kane has just looked like the sharper one in preseason. He's looked a lot sharper. He looks fitter. He looks lean. And when all his shots from outside the box are going in, you know that
he's underperformed. There's absolutely no doubting that he underperformed his XG last season. He's a much better finisher. So if he ups his conversion rate, he could easily outscore some. But where are you still? Who do you prefer? Even with the 0.5 million difference.
I currently have Kane, but I will decide who I go with after watching the game next weekend, and I don't have problems with either. I think, as much as
Son
I always
can be KDB,
want to,
if you really want to target Bournemouth, Son can be switched to KDB the same way Kane can go to Haaland.
If you think about it, actually Baker's strategy of going with Kane and Son game week 1 and then deciding after one game week which Spurs asset is the better one or one that you want to go for and which City asset is the one you want to go for, it makes a lot of sense if you really think about it.
If I had 110 million for sure, it makes sense. But
no. I'm saying, see, in my current setup as a premium, I have Haaland, Kane, and Salah. Now I'm looking like I'm going to be starting my season as a premium. His strategy is that he'll start with Salah and he'll start with both the Spurs boys because they have a better fixture compared to City's, which is West Ham away. Yes. And then based on which City asset looks better and based on which Spurs asset looks better, he'll make that shift for Bournemouth.
That's a decent idea. I like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. It makes sense.
Makes sense. Kulusevski?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think if you don't own Kane or Son, Kulusevski is the best 8 million asset to own game week 1.
That's interesting.
I think he's massively overlooked. He did well. He has more proven FPL pedigree than Diaz because both of them came into the league about the same time. Kulusevski did better than Diaz.
Yes.
In terms of output.
It's a bit different, right? In terms of, like you said, the identity of Liverpool is going to change. Diaz gets more of an impetus. But what worries me about Kulusevski is the Richarlison signing at every 65th minute, especially with the 5 subs thing now. Kulusevski is he's a 60 to 65 minute man.
Yeah, but Richarlison could as easily replace Son, by the way. I don't think he's guaranteed to replace a Kulusevski. That's where I am, because I think out of the 3, Kulusevski offers Richarlison doesn't offer the creativity that a Kulusevski does, and Son doesn't offer the creativity that a Kulusevski does. Kulusevski is actually really good with the balls he plays in. And if you're talking about team dynamic, and especially if they want Kane in the center and not playing the creativity, Kulusevski added that little bit of balance because he was capable of playing those last balls. So, and I also think that Richarlison is you'll have the Luke Shaw effect with Kulusevski, where, the presence of Telles, as much of a crap player as he was, made Luke Shaw a much better player. You'll see similar trends with Kulusevski and Richarlison, where he's aware that there is a guy here to take my position in this team that I'm doing really well in, and it will possibly have a positive effect on him also. I just think he's more proven as an FPL asset in terms of the things he does in the front. He's the outlet on the counter, and he's always around the box. He looks to cut and shoot from on his left foot as well. He's closer to goal a lot more than Diaz. I like him as a pick. Very, very highly overlooked in that 8 million price bracket.
We'll talk more about him when we get to the 8 million comparison.
Especially, actually, just want to add, especially if you're thinking about patterns and patterns of play, and if Perisic is starting on that right hand side, he's got a great cross on him, and Kulusevski is going to be the one at the far post, and he's pretty tall, capable of headers as well. So I quite like it.
Is he tall? I never really noticed that.
Quite tall. Looks it to me. Yeah. Also, just worth mentioning, actually, in terms of content that we have planned for next week, we are going to have Planet FPL James joining us just to talk Spurs on Tuesday, because I think after all the preseason games were in, it's a team I was interested in. So it'll be interesting to hear his point of view, because Baker mentioned that James is generally very pessimistic on Spurs, very, very pessimistic. And I heard you should listen to their content this week. They're doing Correspondence Week, where they're talking to fans from all over the country, each club. And he currently has 2 Spurs attackers, or at least Son on his team. So he's thinking positively about Spurs. So it's worth mentioning that.
That's interesting. Do you want to give the old Discord a plug as well before we move on?
Sure. So this season we started the Discord as well. We've got about 120 people on there. It's ever increasing. It's been great interacting with everybody on there. And basically what we wanted to do is, after 2 years of podding, we wanted to interact closer with all the people that are supporting us. And so if you want to talk to Zoph, Bakar and I regularly, we are on the Discord and spend a fair amount of time there. All you need to do is become a member on our Patreon or on our YouTube. There's no difference in terms of how much you pay us in terms of the 3 tiers. So yeah, it'll be great to have you over on the Discord and interact with you throughout the season.
Move on to Villa.
Yeah, sure.
Team that's interesting because the opening fixtures now. Gerrard was appointed around game week 12-13, and there's not a huge spike in terms of XG. They remain consistently a team that's just around 1.2 XG over the season. So not really big on attack. And there are a lot of low XG games over here, even against weaker opposition. Even the maximum they've hit, I think they crossed 2 XG twice. The entire game, there's a lot of games around 1.5, 1.2. Not really an attack that screams investment.
Yeah, what we saw last season was, Gerrard was struggling to find his first 11. And as you would have it, he's going through a similar dilemma at the moment also, where he hasn't quite made his mind up in terms of whether he wants to go for a 4-3-2-1 or a 4-3-1-2. He's still not decided whether he wants to play Watkins innings, because when he played the preseason friendly against us on last Saturday, Bailey didn't start in what looked like the first team in the first 45. But then he came on after the interval and absolutely changed the game. And then, the worst in terms of the soundings that Gerrard is making is that he's making a really, really strong case in terms of knocking on the door, etc., etc. Leon Bailey has pedigree. The only problem that Leon Bailey has is fitness, and that shouldn't scare you, especially because the fixtures are there for Villa, game week 1 to 4 or 5, and the worry that you have in your head is he's one bad performance away from getting dropped because of the number of assets that are capable of replacing him. So many players in that Villa team. So that's the issue. So he strikes to me as a very high risk pick, but at 5 million, the upside at that price, he could make a mockery of that price. He's a 10-goal player.
But where's your exit route? If Bailey, let's say, is getting dropped game week 2, where are you going to go? You're going to end up playing your Paredes or Neco Williams then.
Which we'll talk about that, because I think people are undermining that. But I'm on a premium. So to release funds in my team, it's something that I'm not too worried about. because I'll find it from one of the premium assets.
So it'll effectively mean 2 transfers, or you have to play your bench guys. Effective. So you have to keep
Yeah,
at least one bench option who's playable. We're going that route, right?
we have 3 at the moment.
Right. We have who are let's talk about those budget mid guys. Just I know we are digressing a little bit because we're talking about who Pereira, probably the best 4.5
Yeah,
mid. He took taking set
and
pieces as well.
I think game week 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to see a lot of whining on Twitter where people are going to be talking about, oh, they put a 6 or 7 point Pereira on their bench. I think he's capable of being a 11th player in your team.
Hmm.
My mindset has changed a little because I saw the preseason highlights, etc. as well. It helps that he's taking corners from one side also. He's capable of being an asset, which is if you rotate with another Neco Williams also, or somebody who's very, very cheap. I think people who earmarked him as an asset that's 4.5 that's permanently sitting on their bench. I think you can cram in much more money on the pitch if you see him as an 11th/12th player, because he's an advanced 8. He's been quite close to goal in the preseason games as I've seen. He's got a good shot on him, got good creativity on him. Fulham are a front foot team. I think our perception in terms of how we look at somebody like a Pereira needs to change, because I think he's nailed on in that Fulham attack.
Who are the other 4.5 guys?
And with Marco, there are no other 4.5 guys, but there are 2 4.0 million defenders that have emerged. And one is Neco Williams. Again, from what I've read and seen, Cooper is not going to be changing his setup where he's playing 3 at the back and wing backs. Now, I was listening to Mark's chat with James this morning, and he mentioned that Neco Williams will probably be spending half his game at least in the final third, especially at home when they have possession. So he's very, very attacking. We know that Neco Williams has a great delivery on him. He had 2 assists and 4 goals in 14 games for Fulham last season. Now he plays for Forest, but in a very attacking wing back role. So, if you find 2 or 3 players who don't cost too much, I think you can play them, and I think you can cram more funds into your starting 11 on the pitch rather than on the bench, because I think they're playable assets. Just because they're 4.0 million, our thinking shouldn't be that, okay, you know what, we need to keep them on the bench, because just again seeing the fixtures,
But you'll need them at some point with COVID still about, with somebody random getting benches. You'll still probably need that guy to come off your bench at some point in the first 4-5 weeks anyway.
And assuming, let's say that you're going to wildcard after game week 5, Pereira has Wolves away, Brentford at home, and Brighton at home in the first 5 weeks. I think he's playable in all 3 of these. I wouldn't mind playing.
I was looking to play
Pereira
him in game week 3 when I have Neto in my team, and Neto is, I think, away to Spurs in game week 3. So that was when I was actually planning to play Pereira.
Yeah, good asset. I just think our perception needs to change. I think he'll surprise a few.
Right. Let's just quickly dial back to Villa in terms of Coutinho, etc. The midfield guys. Do you think any of those guys are worth a look?
Coutinho, good punt at 7 million to start the season. But he's a punt because he was a little start-stop last season. Did really well. Got most of his points in 2 really, really good fixtures. Villa have really, really good fixtures to start the season. Bournemouth away, Everton home. You could get lucky, and I think he's first choice. I don't think you have to worry about it, but he's a punt. That's about it. If you're looking for somebody who could spike a haul in the first 2 weeks, you're looking to play a short-term game, I don't mind Coutinho early season. He's nailed.
Is he though? I don't know.
Yep. He's nailed. I've figured how Steven Gerrard is as a manager, and he doesn't compromise on the big dogs at all. One thing he's assertive about is that.
Fair enough. I don't completely agree. I think with Buendia knocking about, even Bailey, you could play in that number 10 role. I think he's an X-minute.
I think in preseason, in the next game, we will see his first choice front 3, and I reckon is going to be Bailey, Coutinho, and Watkins.
Cool. Move on from Villa. We just get through. I think we're already at about 80 minutes. Let's just speed up.
Sure.
So last one I think we have to talk about now, Wolves. Not really much to touch upon. Low XG. Started quite well. We were quite optimistic on their attack early on, but big slump.
Can I talk about them? Because I have a theory in terms of Wolves. And I want the 6-game rolling XG chart on there. So what happened last preseason, if you dial back when Bruno Lage joined the club, is that they were playing a lot of front foot attacking football in preseason. And it was primarily based around a 4-3-3, which is what you see where they were hitting 1.5 XG. If you remember, they completely outplayed us early season in terms of the number of chances they created, and we somehow got a result in that game, which we didn't deserve to at all. And then they had a ton of injuries. There was no Neto throughout the season. There was no Podence throughout the season. They were primarily operating with a half-fit Jimenez, a Wang, and a Adama Traore up front. And they changed the formation, started playing defense first, and started playing back foot football. All they were doing is sucking in pressure and trying to play on the counter through Traore. Nothing much was happening. Now, I feel like he has Podence, Neto, everybody fit now. And you see that identity change that's happening in preseason where they're playing a good attacking 4-3-3. It's almost sometimes a 4-2-3-1, sometimes a 4-3-3, where Dendonker might get compromised and Gibbs White might come into that setup as a 10, or Podence could come into that setup. But Jimenez had a knock. I don't know what his injury status is at the moment. But people don't realize that Podence, Gibbs White, Neto are really, really good players. And I think they're capable of playing good football.
Gibbs White is a big change to what they had last season.
Yeah. They're just good players. And Neto, I mean, a year before last, he was in the conversation for team of the season or young player of the season. That's how good it is. I think people are new to FPL, don't realize what the ceiling of that pick is. And what's happened is I see a lot of tweets on Twitter where, is Neto a trap? He's in 20% of the teams. No, he isn't a trap. At 5.5 million, it's almost like a gift. He's too obvious a pick. He's a good pick given the fixtures that you have to start the season.
The first two fixtures primarily are the two teams I'm looking to target early on, Leeds and Fulham.
Yeah. Everything I've seen towards the end of last season and preseason highlights, he's just furthest up and really close to goal a lot of the times. He's not somebody who's a winger. He's almost like an inside forward who's always close to goal, is difficult to handle, is a very, very good player, and I'm bullish on Neto as a pick. Podence and Gibbs White, not so much, because I think Neto is a better player, but nothing wrong with the pick at all. In fact, I'm worried I don't have him and I want to get him because I think he's as good a sure thing as you could get in that 5.5 million price bracket.
How much do we read into last season's data? There's a good thread by Blackpool where he spoke about how much better they're looking in preseason. We can only take so much stock going into it. Do they deserve a clean slate?
Yes, because the guys they are playing with are different now.
Right, Neto is fully fit, Gibbs White is back, so I can appreciate that point there.
And it dials down to their defense actually, right? Because what will change our perception is if Wolves concede 3 goals in the first game, 3 goals in the second game, and then Largs shits the bed again and says, you know what, I'm going to go 3 at the back again. Even if that happens, I think Neto is going to be playing up front with Jimenez or whoever his partner is going to be. So I don't think that changes too much in terms of how good a pick Neto is going to be. So I would be more cautious about Wolves defenders, not so much their attackers.
Right. Should we move on to the 8 million mids comparison?
I mean, we've touched upon everybody.
I just want to share some of the data over there. And once again, guys, I want to give credit to these graphs to FPL Grommet. We'll be using similar graphs for the defense pod, which we're going to do later this week. I highly recommend following him. He posts some great stuff, right? There's certain things I want to highlight in the 8 million mids. We won't go too much on these guys. There are something you had mentioned in terms of points per start. Anything you want to highlight here? This is now all positions.
Yeah, no, nothing. Just look at KDB's numbers out there. Everything else is something we're aware of, but KDB's numbers.
So that is 7.6 per start for you audio guys. So that's number 3 behind Chilwell and Salah. Right. So now this is from Fantasy Football Scout. We're looking at the 8 million guys. First off, we're looking at goal threat. Now what's interesting here, Diaz is absolutely top in terms of minutes per penalty box, minutes per shot in the box. Mount shoots, but he shoots from outside a lot. Saka is close. Saka's numbers are also very good in terms of minutes per penalty box shot, minutes per shot. Maddison, similar to Mount, shooting from outside a lot. Mahrez is just a kind of like player who always lures you in with these numbers. Very strong shooting numbers. Let's now have a look at the assist potential. Now, minutes per chance created for Diaz is quite good. It's 48, but minutes per big chance created, 482. That's absurdly bad. That means the chances he's creating are not of very good quality at all. And when look at where Foden
his role is he's a ball carrier in that team.
Yeah,
he's really good at dribbling. So he goes past 2 players, creates space for somebody like Robertson, which is why he's probably doing well once Diaz has come into the team. But he's not an elite passer from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, because you look at Foden, the minutes per big chance created is 195. Kulusevski, who we're talking about, 214. Maddison, 226. Saka also not that great in terms of big chances. Mount is quite superior. Saka again seems to be more of a volume chance creator, and I think that may be to do with set pieces. A lot of those chances created must be low XG chances from set pieces.
And most of his game last season was playing with Odegaard and Lacazette. Both of them essentially fed him. Yeah, so that's the thing. I think he didn't have a runner until towards the end of the season. Now he has Gabriel Jesus, who's a different kind of a player. So, that might change now.
Just a final one. Now, expected goal involvement data. Bakker's favorite Foden comes out on top. Mahrez second. Again, this primarily is because of the creative numbers, which we saw from Foden because of the minutes per big chances created. Minutes per XG is also quite high, which is what you mentioned earlier because of his quality of chances that he was getting.
Exactly. But again, I think you take everything when it comes to City data with a pinch of salt because we're going to see a new style of play. So I just think a new identity is going to come to City in terms of earlier, they had to distribute the shots amongst these 3 or 4 attacking midfielders. Now they're going to be funneled towards one attacker. So how that changes things is worth monitoring.
Right. Let's just do a final roundup because the 8 million mid bracket is important. Top 3 for you, 8 million mids.
Kulusevski, Diaz, Maddison.
Maddison over Saka, even with those initial fixtures.
Because there are better options in the Arsenal team.
Right, but basket wasting.
You have 2 good attackers in the Arsenal team. Compared to Maddison, who I think is...
You mean because you're looking at Martinelli as an alternative? I guess if you look at it in Dyson, but I'm talking about purely in isolation, I think Diaz top for me. Saka 2, I would put Kulu at 3rd, primarily because I just worry. Richarlison could just probably start. I know first game he's suspended for because of him throwing the flare, but 2, 3, 4, and I'm planning for a little bit longer. I want to wildcard after the international break, so I still want some consistency of starts when Europe kicks in. And I don't necessarily want to use a transfer in that position. That's what I am. So there's a few teams we haven't touched, and guys, you can send in your questions soon. We'll be taking the Q&A.
No. This there are a few players I want to talk about. So I'll quickly we'll go team by team. Arsenal we touched upon, Villa we touched upon, Bournemouth we don't want to touch upon, Brentford. Just think Vissa is a good option. He ended the season really well and he had 10 goals last season, something people don't realize. But the only problem is that he's competing with Lewis Potter on that left wing slot at the moment. So wanted to cite that. Are you interested at all, or do you think there are better options?
Better options. I don't trust what happened towards end of season is a lot of noise. I don't trust a lot of end of season stuff. There's a lot of variables at play over there.
All right. I don't want to talk about Crystal Palace, but I just think Zaha is going to have a really good season. He's on penalties and now he's a midfielder. So he should get a lot more points also. I think Crystal Palace is the team you need to watch game week 1 to 5 because they have bad fixtures to start the season. But this is the team that's going to explode, I reckon, even in attack, because Vieira showed lots of promise. And I think one of Zaha, Olise or Eze are going to really, really stand out and put their hand up as a pick. And you need to watch out for this team. I think Zaha could be capable of like a 160, 170 point this season this year, I reckon. And that's good value at 7 million. He looks to me like one of those glue guys once that team is settled. Because Palace, as you've seen previously in last season, they're capable of holding their own in terms of possession and shot creation and chance creation against anybody. So yeah, just wanted to touch that. Anything to add in Palace?
Fixtures: Arsenal, Liverpool, City, first 3 or 4. So go.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to them from a season-long point of view and just say that keep a close eye on them because on Wildcard you'll want a Crystal Palace as they're a team to watch out for. That will go upper level.
2 other teams we haven't talked about. Everton, Frankie's.
Do you think you can go for a Gordon or a Gray or a Dele even who had a brace in preseason compared to Neto at 5.5 million? No, because of the fixtures for me.
Fixtures, and they're probably good exit routes. At least at 5.5 you have options where you can jump from Neto because the fixtures perk up around game week 3, Forest, Brentford, Leeds. They even have the derby in 6. So it's a good exit route.
Yep. In terms of exit routes, actually, I want to touch upon Forest. I've just looked at the teams as of taking my judgment call in terms of who we want to talk about. But Jesse Lingard is back, and everything that I'm saying is a repeat of what Mark said in terms of what I heard. But Forest essentially play a 3-4-1-2, and Brennan Johnson and Taiwo are wide forwards. And what he's saying is this actually leads to a lot of. Can you hear me clearly? Because
we had some distortion because that scene was causing some noise. I switched back. We are fine now.
We're fine now. Yeah. So what happens is with Brendan and Taiwo being split forwards, they will be wide. Brennan will be wide on the right, and Taiwo will be wide on the left. There's a lot of space for the number 10 to operate right in the center. And Mark was extremely bullish on Jesse Lingard at 6 million being that option and doing really, really well. And it's actually even a better role compared to his West Ham role, if you think about it, because West Ham, he was maybe tilting towards the left. If he gets to play in a central role, running in with two forwards, splitting the center backs, it sounds like it could work really, really well for somebody like a Jesse Lingard. And he has FPL
I like him
pedigree.
at 6 billion. I think it's an outstanding attacking asset now in that Forest team.
Exactly. He looks like he's going to be the talisman in that team, as well as Brennan Johnson, who's a good option up front. But again, Forrest is somebody we're going to be touching in our first wildcard, maybe. They do have decent fixtures in the front three: Newcastle, West Ham, Everton. But Spurs and City after that makes me think I want to jump after game week 5. That's all.
And even the good games, you see Newcastle and Everton, they're both away. West Ham are a good team. Newcastle are a good team.
West Ham is the last team we need to cover.
Bowen.
8.5 million, Jared Bowen. What are your thoughts there?
Let's have a quick look at the fixtures. City, Forest.
After City, it's not bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But again, once the Europa League stuff kicks in, I'd be very worried. Because it's too much fixture congestion for them with their squad.
That said, if you think about it, Bowen really kicked in the second half of the season, which is when Europa League was on.
Yep.
So
that's true.
How much does that hold?
Moyes has talked about he can play 3 days a week, but it's not just him. It's about the rest of the squad. And you could argue that he's sort of fixture proof. I think he scored against City last season, didn't he?
Yeah.
Same fixture at home.
He's the outlet on the counter, and West Ham like to counter. That's basically how they like to play. They don't like to play a Newcastle team because Newcastle sat deep against them as well. Generally, they like teams that are on the front foot. But I just think he's competing too much with high potential assets in the top 4 teams that we've spoken about, which are priced under him.
There's top 4 buyers. And I have it. I'm sure you have it as well. We naturally, when spending 8 billion, we'd like to go for the top 3, top 4 teams.
And now you're getting top 4 assets at 6.5 million also. So
it just feels a bit too much. Interesting. Right. Should we move on to Q&A?
Yes, we'll move on to Q&A.
I'll just keep the same screen. The main screen seems to be lagging a bit.
All right, Zoph, just for the benefit of the listeners, what's your current Tinker midfield looking like?
I've switched to a 3. I've currently got Neto, Salah, Diaz, and Rashford. Up top, I think I've got Jesus, Kane, and who else? Marshall. I don't think I have Rashford, and I think I switched out Rashford. I have to look. I haven't really started tinkering as much. I want to leave it more to like after the shield. I just make 1 or 2 changes.
I think you need to be really careful about tinkering this week. Just do it after you see all the games on Saturday and then see where you are.
Yeah. I'm definitely not going double United attack. So I've definitely got somebody wrong. I think maybe Martinelli is there instead of Rashford. That would make sense because I think I put that 0.5.
Yep. Okay. Jananger has asked us a question. He's got all 3 grab deals currently. How do you rate Martinelli to the CB? Really like him for CS potential and corner threat. Leicester, Palace, Bournemouth, Fulham can see 15 points. Underrated pick. Really like it. We're going to be touching upon defense on Thursday, but I have nothing against Gabriel at 5 million.
Good pick.
Especially given Arsenal's first few.
But Zinchenko. I've currently got Zinchenko as in my 3rd defender. I like him because he might be playing a midfield role. Bit of the shiny new toy thing there as well. And he's a great player.
Yep. I just don't know where he's going to play because I think Tierney is dealing with niggles early season. That said, I actually don't mind him in the wing-back role also because we'll touch upon this in the defender spot because I want to dive deeper.
And we should look to wrap up soon.
Cool. Couple more minutes. Let's see if any questions. Okay, Neto versus Bailey. I am Neto. Is a much better pick at the moment. Bailey is just, in terms of risk profile, is too much.
I hope you guys enjoyed this stream, guys. It was a bit data heavy today, but I think those graphs added a lot of value to the discussion.
Yep. And I think this is when you dive deep, right? And look at everything from a slightly more macro point of view as well. So just also make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe button also, guys. We're at 19K subs and we want to get to 20K subs. We never really do this. We want to get to 20K subs before the season starts, before game week 1. We've got 2 weeks. You can get us 1,000 more subs. It'll be we'll be very, very grateful. You just have to click on that button. What are your thoughts on Ramsdale versus Zinchenko? Nihal's asking.
Let's keep it for Thursday. In terms of goalkeepers, there's a lot to unpack over there.
Yep. Cool. Best 8 million mid, we've rated our 8 million plays. We've rated our top 3. So don't worry about that. I think we'll wrap up, Zoph, because I think everything that needed to be covered, we've covered it. Thank you so much, guys. And we'll see you on Thursday with the defense pod. Take care, guys. And spread the word if you like.